Okay, so the name of my talk was Urbanism in the House. I've had a plan A, then I had a plan B, and then I had a plan C for what I was going to talk about. And then I decided maybe it's best to go with plan ABC. So I made my last-minute reorganizings about 30 seconds ago. I'm going to talk about a book. I'm going to read one chapter from it. Then I'm going to play tracks from a record. And then I'm going to show you one building. And I thought maybe I'll start by taking risks. And I will just sing to you. The social order of antique democracies was based on strict divisions of labor. Slaves and farmers, and soldiers and artisans, merchants and the free men. Here the boundaries between labor and leisure are articulated as social class. The liberty of free men, supported by the structure of the entire city-state. These boundaries have since been manipulated and changed the logic of business and pleasure. The demographic divisions of past eras evolved into divisions in time, periods in life, short or long, when we assume different roles. The Industrial Revolution set the base for mass consumer society and formulated the ingenious equation: a week of labor equaling a weekend of leisure. As a consumer, a modern free citizen. Wealth earned in servitude translates to different kinds of freedoms. Securities and commodities, waypoints in the pursuit of happiness and a meaningful life. As the division between labor and leisure is blurred, we face a dilemma. There is no more clear equation. We are what we do in business and pleasure. Our identity shaped by a passion for our work, in the things we produce, not only things we consume. It's demonstrated in the choices we make, in the ideas we believe in, the works we create, in the lives that we live. There's sense and substance. The skill of living is the new wealth, produced and consumed through both labor and leisure. Okay, I'm not nervous anymore. That's nice. So that was a track called Business and Pleasure from Urbanism in the House, a record that I released a while ago, about 2 years ago. And the next thing I'd like to share with you is a chapter from a book that came out about 2 months ago. It's a book in a series called Solution, published by Sternberg Press. And this chapter is called Mythcraft. Still a bit about the series and the book. We wrote this together with a colleague of mine, Martti Kalliala and Jenna Sutela. And the series is, I think this is the 10th book in the series. It's edited by Ingo Nierman, and it started as an idea, or kind of as a platform to rethink the nation state and the future of countries. And I was here in 2005, 2006 for a little over a month, and I ended up teaching at the Art Academy through a friend, and who asked me if I could come in and talk about tourism and national character, and kind of it was a course, a multidisciplinary course on the future of tourism in Iceland, and the course was really interesting, and the results were very intelligent and fabulous. But one of the things that really struck me was that the students that were in that group were the first architecture students of Iceland. And as an architect, the idea that someone gets to be, in a way, has in a way a free, a kind of completely unpopulated field, you can be the first in, you know, kind of defining what something is, and in a way, through this, be able to take part or to participate in the somehow shaping the country, shaping something that then becomes the base for something else for the future, I think is really really exciting. And it led me to think about the history of Finland, and it's the kind of origins of the cultural project called Finland, which is very much actually in the kind of heart of this book. Mythcraft. When spring came, Elias Lönnroth would leave his shoes in town, smear his bare feet with tar, and travel by foot eastward to Karelia to collect folk stories and songs. He sought out villages where life had remained largely unchanged, where old stories, tales, and teachings were still in living memory. In dark and low rooms with small doors and thick log walls, elders would sit facing each other, holding hands by the light of a dim fire. With repetitive pentatonic melancholy, they chanted tales of adventure, conquest, and misfortune, narrated by the voices of ancient heroes: Väinämöinen, Lemminkäinen, Kullervo, Ilmarinen. When Lönnroth heard the songs, they were still malleable and relative, versions belonging to both listener as much as the storyteller, an oral contract binding both to living heritage. Out of the scattered material he recorded on his rugged journeys, Lönnroth edited and compiled an epic poem and published the first version of Kalevala in 1835. Until that point, there had never been a comprehensive manuscript, an original form, a root song, or coherent saga. It was pure construct, a myth purpose-built to measure on a grand scale, namely what was inspired by transient encounters and legends, and the concern to rescue them for eternity, transformed into a product of its own, an original Finnish myth, a common shared background, just what the linguistic cultural project needed. The author, contextualized as the founder of the Finnish Literature Society and a doctor of the magical medicine of Finns, could not have been more relevant and timely. The tactical employment of Kalevala as part of the national project represents a sort of mythical conversion, the fantastic past acquiring a formalized, fixed, final shape, contrasting enough with the contemporary condition, thus becoming a tool to define, create, and deliver a new tomorrow, a then utopian idea of a culture and country proper. Now void of gods and heroes, the primitive forest gradually ceased to be the site of living myth. Instead, the site of the mythical migrated to inhabit a manipulable time ahead where anything could be imagined, with a shaping, changing society as an exciting canvas for cultural, social, and political fancy, even fiction. The Creative and Cultural Society of the late 19th century was the author of the National Romantic Project, fueled by visualizations of Karelian mythos, documenting authentic rural ways of life and identifying national landscapes. These artists, authors, playwrights, composers, and architects saw their work as part of a grand project, crafting a heritage, fabricating a basis for identity and independence, reinventing a history in order to imagine the future. In the 20th century, as the project for political sovereignty had was completed and the wide horizon of possible times ahead was narrowed by realism, the work of artists shifted towards setting more personal agendas. Resonating with international networks in respect of individual and collective particularities, the focus moving from nation to niche, the work started to reach beyond geographical boundaries. The artists went on to create fantasies that employed the power of mythology to engage in global dialogue and influence the future at large, attempting to concoct a universal elixir. For example, without any veil of symbolism or abstraction, artist Touko Laaksonen, better known as Tom of Finland, created a pantheon of hypersexual men to rule the world of his fetishistic oeuvre. Although he started his career by employing Finnish national motifs such as army uniforms and loggers, his homoerotic project came to full fruition only when the transformative impact of his images with mustached, muscular men in leather delivered a lasting global impact on gay identities and desires. Having worked in America, Laaksonen's vivid visual account of a magical, mythical gay paradise is represented under a pseudonym that rebrands his country of origin, but where he and his work paradoxically remain largely unknown and unappreciated. This is from the Tom of Finland Foundation archive, a wonderful image. I have to read the caption for you. When earlier myths became impotent, Tom of Finland's subversive output delivered a lasting global impact. Similarly, before becoming a global phenomenon as beloved children's literature, a Japanese animation series, and a line of merchandise, Tove Jansson's Moomins originally started their life in the margins as a satirical bourgeois clan in a political cartoon that gained recognition by being published in a British newspaper. The Moomins were a modern mythology combining a rich cast of characters with settings, beliefs, and tales that reappropriated the landscapes and traditions of the Finnish and Swedish archipelagos, fusing them with a new liberal atmosphere and flirting with anarchic and psychedelic themes. Living in a communal manner around Moomin Valley, houses, lighthouses and theaters surrounded by forests, the Bohemian Moomins inherited the personalities and appearances of Jansson's colorful circle of friends and relatives who were involved in transforming real-life Finland and part of the country's vibrant cultural scene. Unlike the national romantics of the late 19th century, Laaksonen and Jansson kept their marginal positions, refusing to accept the society, culture and nation around them, leaning towards a transnational identity or mondialité. Their subversive output aimed to produce difference and introduce alternative lifestyles, combining glimpses of a new society within the shell of the old, challenging the status quo in both content and form, following their urgent personal gospels. Laaksonen's and Jansson's chosen media interface with popular culture and its maximum efficiency. In the footsteps of Lönnrot's alchemical agenda, their artistic output redefined, renamed, and even reinvented the surrounding context. However, even if their projects also dealt with national identity, they mostly focused on crafting an original mythology aimed at transforming society towards the emancipation of the individual and personal sovereignty. The importance of design and architecture in imagining, visualizing, and creating the mythical tomorrow of the nation-state is apparent in the construction of the welfare state that coincided with the acme of Finnish design in the 1950s and 60s. When imagining a tomorrow in a time of transformation, every object, building, city, service, or product is futuristic, offering an opportunity for systemic change. The designer becomes a shaman, summoning the imminent unknown. As Enzo Mari explains, every design is an artifact from another place, a better world imagined by the designer, more beautiful, more intelligent, more just. In a time of forward-looking optimism, these plans become the new mythology, with the capacity to evoke, conjure, and produce the collective imagined future. The welfare state continued in the tradition of this alchemical agenda. As we imagine it, we will build it. As we shape it, it will mold us. If we trust it, it will work. Now, we are less sure that they imagined it just, that they built it right, uncertain whether it was shaped properly or if it molded us at all. We doubt that it ever worked. Expectations have diminished, and contemporary myths have suffered the same inflation as utopia. Neither heroic pasts nor hedonist presents manage to stimulate our imagination. Only the future emerging from the impossibility of any future keeps us alert, concerned, and engaged. But instead of a better future, we dream of ways to solve problems that we have ourselves created. It is precisely the idea of a solution and faith in our capacity to actually solve problems, real or imagined, which is a potent contemporary myth. Solutions are alluring, as they present an opportunity to rectify and settle something, making things simpler, fixing imperfections, correcting ills. Every proposed solution challenges to consider, imagine, and even believe in a world in which it will be implemented, where it will succeed. And this is why the idea of a solution terrifies and makes our hands shake. So, still about the record. Just like this text that I just read, all of the tracks on urbanism in the house actually were originally essays or kind of longer texts that were then edited and kind of condensed into song form, and I will play you a track next, which is called 2001. In 2001, in the dawn of man's sequence, a black monolith appears. Primitive ape men to use bones as weapons. A bone-bearing hominid beats the dried skull of a large mammal under an orange sky and imagines the slow-motion death of the animal. This moment in which the mind shifts its attention between action and method from end to means and back demonstrates a uniquely human skill of applied imagination or design. This skill drives progress forward and governs our thinking. Every new task or problem becomes a spark for a new evolution of tools, solutions and methods aimed at achieving better, faster or easier results. Our world is generated by this reflex. In 2001, the source of inspiration for the first design act was the introduction of the abstract. The super smooth surface of the Cartesian monolith is so unlike nature that the early men immediately understand its alienness. In 2001, the imitation of artificiality is the original motive for design. In 2001, the imitation of artificiality is the original motive for design. Among the great human inventions, language, fire, wheel and money, the city activates the others as a catalyst for culture, progress and civilization. Our mission is to develop it further. While the 20th century promised us metropolis, self-actualization and mobility, it delivered sprawl, slums and suburbia. We must now take responsibility for the urbanism of the 21st century. Master plans have described better futures, hatched in with happiness, prosperity and welfare, but the world beyond the paper's edge has spun out of control. A population supernova, constant conflict fueled by the quick unsustainable depletion of resources and a global compromise on cultural and biological diversity. As we cope with this massive change, we face a set of new challenges. The amplified unpredictability of globalization, changing climate, future demographics, and the complex problems of providing food, energy, and water for all. Our generation's challenge is learning how to live peacefully and sustainably in an extraordinarily crowded world. We realize the city may be our only hope. How to moderate the impact of contemporary culture on our habitats? How can cities shape future society? How can we all take part in their conception and construction? How to balance hedonism and idealism? Merge ecology and economy. Fuse the best of top-down leadership and bottom-up intelligence. How to connect and combine bold ambition with humble quality, sensitive responsibility with fresh concepts, local traditions with new technology, common sense with elaborate skill. Complex diversity with enlightened clarity, big ideas with intelligent details and good questions with relevant answers. Cities, governments and businesses that succeed in the future will be those that give people greater power to shape the future of their individual lives and a greater capacity to collaborate. Individual and collective activity, people doing things together near other people doing other things while building and modifying their surroundings is the essence of the urban process. But how to ensure that our designs, regulations and good intentions do not inhibit or extinguish it? Can we create a faster, smarter, livelier and more diverse urban future for all? A matrix of plots cut by a street grid remains the universal urban syntax. This plot restricts and consolidates edges but liberates the conditions within to be manipulated and reiterated independently. The smaller the plot, the easier it becomes for the individual to participate in the urban process. Every room, building, neighborhood or city is live evidence of this urban metabolism being built up, torn down, rebuilt, modified again and again. Boundaries for growth and high population densities enrich service diversity and support local, specific and specialized urban cultures. In creating urban quality, sensitive, flexible and intelligent processes are crucial, and these may operate in any scale or time frame. Participation drives the personalization of services, products, lifestyles, neighborhoods and cities, all becoming platforms for self-actualizations. My actions are to be seen, heard and felt in my everyday life, in my city, in our everyday life, in our city. Self-built and molded to our needs and dreams. Change is constant, yet it requires both patience and action. Present conditions are irreversible, but always temporary. Master plans don't work. The city is never complete. This house is not finished. And this is fresh. Thank you. So this is the point where I kind of switch back to talking, and I'll talk a bit about a project which kind of is very much a continuation of maybe a lot of the themes that I am interested in, that we are interested in. When I speak of we, sometimes it means our office. We have a small office in Helsinki called Now, or Now for Architecture and Urbanism, or Now Office. We have two different companies. It's an architecture practice And then together with my wife and partner, Nene Tsuboi, we do a lot of work which has to do with publications, curating events, and also we do things in the design field. The project that we're now most involved in is called Kulttuurisauna, and somehow its origins actually relate to this record somehow. On the record cover, I think, there it is. It's a bit dark, but here on a bench sits Nene, and we're looking over the Helsinki harbor into the new area, a new neighborhood called Kalasatama, and into where Helsinki will build a new neighborhood, and somehow the idea of as being said, to kind of participate in making the city, we kind of started to look for a project that we could somehow take on ourselves on our own terms, and make somehow contribute to the city through a building project that would be somehow unusual and transformative. And this is where the picture was taken from, and we didn't know it at the time. We went to Kalasatama urban planning team in the Helsinki urban planning department, and we kind of asked if there would be an available lot for a small building that we could build. And we proposed that we would build a public bath in this new neighborhood, so that, and in Finland it's customary that you build, when you're building, for example, a house in the countryside, that you build the sauna first and then you build the main house. And the idea was to build, let's build the sauna first to this neighborhood, and then the city can be kind of constructed, and it would become the oldest building in the part of town. Technical issues, the ground is polluted. It sounds like a fabulous idea, but that's going to take about 8 years before we can kind of actually give you the lot. The master plan is the master plan is not ready, was the answer. But then they proposed that why don't you go on the other side of the harbor, on the city center side. There's a kind of leftover piece of land, which this picture is taken from, which was built for a cafe as part of a neighborhood in the 1970s. This is the peninsula here, and Kalasatama is on that side. Center of Helsinki is somewhere here, the railway station. And this peninsula was built to make a cafe on it, and the neighborhood behind was completed and no one started the cafe. So there was a kind of uncompleted master plan, and from being the first building of a part of town, we went to being the last. And so we applied for this lot, and proposed to build a public sauna in Helsinki, and we're kind of doing this as citizens, it's a family company that will run the sauna, and we're really big fans of public saunas in Finland. We had a very kind of active sauna culture in all the cities until maybe until the 60s, and then it's been kind of decreasing. Helsinki has 4 public saunas at the moment. We had about 200 in the 1920s. So somehow there hasn't been many public saunas built in the last 50 years. And we started researching the subject, and we found this quite amazing text. And it's from 1925 or 1926 from a newspaper called Keskisuomalainen from Jyväskylä. And on page 3 there's an open letter written by a young architect. He's 26 years old. He hasn't built anything. If you see really well, his name is Alvar Aalto. He's a kind of homeboy from Jyväskylä, and he has this he has a kind of dilemma. It starts as it's called a proposal to beautify our city and the possibilities of this beautification scheme. And he proposes, let us build there a sauna, not the usual kind of caricature of a half-civilized Finnish sauna, as all of our saunas today are, but a cultural sauna, a national monument, first of its kind, in the burgeoning kind of Finnish civilization. And he goes on to describe this building as something kind of extraordinary. And the idea of Finland being the home country of the sauna, where this kind of characteristical cultural phenomena hasn't somehow been kind of fully explored. And he describes it as a kind of Roman bath, as a place to not only to get clean, but a building that has you know, kind of much broader dimension. And this was incredibly inspiring as a text. Aalto kind of forgot about this. He moved to Turku and won a competition, and nothing happened in Jyväskylä of this open letter. But we've kind of taken, we're maybe honoring the idea, or kind of holding on to the concept of this building as being more than just it's not a spa. You know, we will see what it is, but it may be something else also. So this is the site plan. The building rises straight out from the water on two sides. It's 300 square meters in floor area. There's a small courtyard. There was the tree on the site, which stays in the courtyard, and this is the floor plan. You enter from here into a kind of colonnade, a lobby. There's a small cafe and a waiting space, a kiosk where you can get a towel and some drinks, and then you enter the two saunas. There's a kiuas, or the stove, a single stove, which is split by the partition wall between men and women's area. After being in the hot room, you come out and you either go on the evening sun side, sit on the stairs here, or you can dip in the water in the harbor. There's stairs to the sea, also open in winter. Especially old women in Finland are very much into ice swimming. So there's also a cabinet in the corner, and above the cabinet there's a pyramid. This is the facade. The project started out looking something completely different, but it seemed to have a will of its own, and we've kind of ended up in an architecture no man's land. Here's a model we built last summer, and inside the pyramid, a planetarium. And so I'm the architect and kind of chief designer of the project. We will own the building, and so we are kind of taking a personal financial risk with the project. We applied for a long land lease on the land, and we've signed a 30-year contract 2 weeks ago for the lot. We got a building permit, and this is us last week with building permit inspector, the structural engineer, and our kind of construction supervisor on the site, and we will start in 2 weeks or in 10 days with drilling some pilings, and we aim to open next autumn. Do I still have time for 5 minutes? Yeah? And maybe we'll have time to kind of talk about this later. It's still maybe a word about kind of. I mean, obviously, it's not the typical script that kind of you start building a public building in your hometown. But somehow, I guess, if you know how to design or make a building, it's not such a, you know, it's doable.
The building is quite small. It's like a largish private house. We're building it in a very kind of sparse and very kind of simple, casual way. And it's been really special to be kind of in charge of everything, to be the client, to be the designer, to be the kind of having to think about, you know, the neighbors or doing the permit process, and also to imagine the future life in the building. So somehow not only designing the hardware of the building, the walls, the doors, the dimensions, but also all the time thinking of how will it be not only used by the visitors, the guests, but also how will our life be when we are going to spend 30 years in a building. And it kind of becomes an exercise in both. Both the hardware becomes quite malleable, but also the software in a way. And in a way, as we build it, it will shape us. You know, really kind of becomes very something you have to constantly think. I'm going to switch my input, and I'm going to play you one more track, and that's Dessert.
Utopias have always proposed rationality and discipline to build better cities for people to live in. Rewind to Fourier and Ledoux. Town planning becomes a tool to design and change society through the idea of an ideal city. Mr. Ebenezer Howard's theory of three magnets refuses to recognize benefits of neither town nor country, relocating the positive aspects to a new border area, the benign garden city, aka suburbia. U is for utopia. U is for utopia. U is for utopia. U is for utopia. Corbusier knows a city life. It cannot happen in the suburbs, so the suburbs have to happen where city already exists. The clarity of his vision, the radiant city, is the brilliant solution to heal the festering metropolis by creation of tabula rasa. Instead, the post-war need and greed sparks the big bang of suburbia. La ville radieuse taken out of town to Howard's Garden City becomes the explosive blueprint for an entirely urban planet that sees all space as commodity and potential for further conquest. Yo, this is a new utopia, unlimited growth with new technology, geodesic domes, walk-in cities, Space Odyssey 2001. U is for utopia. U is for utopia. U is for utopia. U is for utopia. Disappointment of 68, oil crisis, disillusionment. Utopia loses innocence as it starts dealing with the world. Overpopulation, social problems, environmental issues, poverty. However, mass production, standardization, computerization, mobility. U is for utopia. U is for utopia. U is for utopia. U is for utopia. You left your mark on the city. You couldn't purge it of its complexity. Ideal diluted into reality. Just that greed and necessity. The price is right. Live out your fantasy. City is consumer utopia. If you work for a week, you can shop for a weekend. This is the equation we struggle to maintain. Can you turn it up? Still more? Like really? Come on. And let's put the lights down. Lights down. Nice to see you. We made it to my lecture. Your 5 points towards now architecture, system of the world, a miracle of science can fix reality. Lamb's angered alliance. Me said, no less is more. And Bob replied, less is the more. And that was before. Now we must progress and do more to impact less. Yo, more nature, more city, more urban cores, build less sprawl, emit less carbon. Yo, more trees, more transport, towers store, no more diamond like king. Yo, it's a war. Keskusta pari ensi urban schism. Kikarostari mava and Nurmijärvism. Land use distortion. Big big box prison. Hit it with the power move, now urbanism. Low to know and reach for the glow. This golden era and its status quo. Low to know and reroute the flow. Bend the curves, grow more slow. Sticks and stones, London homes. Maintain the balance, these skeleton bones. A lyrical footprint, iron-bodied jargon. Flesh mostly made of water and carbon. Anti-suburban nightclub track composer. Feel now how the future comes closer. Cross over to the policy maker. Eyes on the prime line, future forecast breaker. I know you're angry, I'm angry too. Who took away my urban rights? I know you're angry, I'm angry too. You read the policy peer review. More ambition please, it's size laconic. You think to be polite or just ironic. Low to know and race for the goal. This golden era and its status quo. Low to know and race for the flow. Bend the curves, grow more slow. Ay, ay, ay.
Kiitos. Tack.